I have a I have a few examples of ethical situations that I've had to deal with over the years that come to mind. At least probably have had thousands of instances where I've had to make conscious or unconscious decisions arising out of ethical considerations. One involved an investigation I was working on about the gentrification of a small city where hundreds of thousands of poor former mental patients were pushed out to make way for expensive condominiums along the shorefront. And as part of this investigation, we spent a lot of time interviewing a lot of people. And one of them was the city manager, who was in the middle of what we believed to be a scheme where a fire was set in a building, folks were pushed out, while the firemen put out a very minor blaze. The building department would come down and not let anybody go back in the building. And the owner couldn't afford to fix them. It was not a particularly expensive or profitable building. And a few months later, however, somebody would make an offer for what seemed like 3 or 4 times the value, and the owner would be glad to sell. And then several months later, a well-connected lawyer would apply on behalf of the new owners for a zoning variance that would allow them to build far more on the property than they ever could have. And this was a pattern we found repeating. So as part of this process, I and my partner interviewed the city manager, and we spent a lot of time getting to know him. And he was a paid employee. He was not one of the big-time politicians. He wasn't making a lot of money off of this. He was kind of like an errand boy. And at one time, we were having lunch, and it was an on-the-record conversation. At one point, he says, "Can I tell you something off the record?" And I said, I looked at my partner. I said, "Sure." I mean, this was more just kind of a continue to get to know you. Maybe it was a soften you up, gain your trust. And we said, "Sure." And he told us a story of how he had been offered a bribe. And we listened to this story, and he mentioned the people who were involved in this, and these were important players. And he said, "Now, this is off the record." And I said, "I know I said that, but I really have to check back with my bosses to find out if something that's criminal is covered by the covenant." And he said, "But you promised." And I said, "Well, I know I did, but I just want to check." And he was very, very upset about that. The truth is that I knew what the rules were, and this was part of a manipulation of trying to get him to let us use something that he really didn't want. But he held his guns, and I went back and I was told, "Well, obviously you can't use this." So then what I did was I used the information to try to find people who would confirm this, which is a real dark gray area ethically. And I wanted this story so badly that I was willing to really violate my word, in spirit, if not finding a way to get around it. And I was saved by a decision by my superiors that essentially said the fruit of your, the fruit was tainted by the tree. I think there's an expression in the law that you got it under circumstances where you were not supposed to have known it, and every inquiry you made after that was driven by what you knew. And it wasn't a case where the guy said, "I'm going to tell you that you can't get it from me if you can get it from others." That's a different sort. This was, and I would have run with this aspect of the story. As it turned out, we had a great series. We won a lot of prizes for it. It stood up without that, and I was able to live with myself, but only because I was saved from somebody else.